Now that you have secured administrative access patterns using Azure Firewall and Azure Bastion, you are ready to connect Azure to the rest of your enterprise in a way that is reliable, governed, and defensible. Hybrid connectivity is not just getting connectivity working, it is how you protect business continuity when cloud workloads still depend on on-premises systems, how you manage risk at the boundary, and how you avoid creating fragile network paths that become your next outage. Your hybrid design becomes a long-term contract between cloud and legacy, so you want that contract to be intentional. With that context, you now anchor why hybrid connectivity exists in the first place. You build hybrid because the business does not modernize in one clean cut. Identity systems, directory services, legacy applications, data feeds, operational technology, and third-party integrations often remain on-premises for years. Even when you migrate applications, they still call back to on-premises dependencies like file shares, databases, identity services, or integration platforms. Your hybrid strategy is how you keep transformation moving while the enterprise reality remains mixed. Leaders care because hybrid failures interrupt core operations. Architects care because hybrid dependencies shape application design and limit your freedom if you get it wrong. With hybrid necessity clear, you now reframe the choice between site-to-site virtual private network and ExpressRoute as a leadership decision, not a product comparison. You are deciding how much predictability, performance consistency, and operational assurance your organization requires, and how much cost and complexity it is willing to accept to achieve that. If you treat it as a purely technical selection, you will end up debating features. If you treat it as a business risk decision, you will align on outcomes like service continuity, customer experience, and resilience against disruption. With the decision framed correctly, you start by defining site-to-site virtual private network in plain language. Site-to-site virtual private network creates an encrypted connection over the public internet between your on-premises network and your Azure network. It is often the first hybrid step because it is accessible, flexible, and can be implemented quickly compared to private connectivity programs. For leaders, it provides a practical way to start hybrid connectivity without major long-term commitments. For architects, it enables early migration and connectivity validation while you continue to mature the landing zone, network segmentation, and operational model. With site-to-site virtual private network understood, you now define ExpressRoute in the same plain terms. ExpressRoute provides private connectivity between your network and Microsoft Cloud services through a connectivity provider, giving you a more predictable and enterprise-oriented connectivity model for many scenarios. You are not relying on general internet routing in the same way, and you typically gain more consistent performance characteristics and operational assurance. For leaders, ExpressRoute is often a strategic investment that supports business-critical workloads and long-term cloud adoption at scale. For architects, it becomes a foundational capability that reduces unpredictability as hybrid dependency increases. With both options defined, you now introduce the three lenses that will decide which approach fits your organization. Risk is about how the boundary could be exploited, misused, or disrupted, and how much damage that could cause. Reliability is about how much connectivity disruption your business can tolerate, including maintenance, outages, and degradation. Reach is about how widely hybrid connectivity will be used, including the number of workloads, the number of teams, and how deeply applications depend on cross-boundary calls. These three lenses keep the conversation focused on business impact rather than personal preferences. With the lenses established, you now address the boundary security truth that leaders must hear. Both options still require strong security architecture because the hybrid link is a privileged pathway between environments. Site-to-site virtual private network relies on strong encryption over the internet, but you still treat the boundary as high risk because disruption and scanning attempts are part of internet reality. ExpressRoute provides private connectivity, but private connectivity is not the same as trusted connectivity. So you still enforce segmentation, identity controls, traffic inspection, and monitoring. Your goal is not to pick a secure product. Your goal is to build a secure boundary with layered controls. With boundary security clear, you now focus on reliability because this is where leaders feel the impact most directly. Many business processes do not tolerate connectivity loss, especially when cloud applications still depend on on-premises systems for authentication, data feeds, or integration. Site-to-site virtual private network can be reliable, but it is influenced by internet conditions and provider variability, which means you must plan for fluctuations. ExpressRoute is commonly selected when you require higher predictability and operational assurance for critical workloads. The leadership decision is about the cost of disruption. How quickly does connectivity degradation become a business incident? And what level of investment reduces that risk appropriately? With reliability covered, you now address latency because latency is where hybrid designs quietly fail. Hybrid latency problems often surface as slow applications, timeouts, and unstable user experience, even when everything looks connected. If an application in Azure makes frequent calls to on-premises services, small delays become large delays at scale. Site-to-site virtual private network can support many performance needs, but performance consistency can vary depending on conditions. ExpressRoute is often justified when performance predictability is critical for user experience, data movement, and application stability. Leaders care because latency affects productivity and customer satisfaction. Architects care because latency forces redesign, which is expensive and disruptive. With performance in view, you now evaluate scale because the wrong choice becomes painful when adoption grows. When hybrid is used by a handful of workloads, simpler connectivity may be adequate. When hybrid becomes the backbone for dozens of applications, data platforms, and operational processes, you need a connectivity model that is easier to govern, easier to troubleshoot, and easier to evolve. ExpressRoute is commonly chosen in large enterprises because the environment needs predictable connectivity behavior at scale. Site-to-site virtual private network remains valuable, but you must be intentional about how you manage growth. Otherwise, you create a patchwork of tunnels and exceptions that become hard to operate. With scale established, you now move to governance because hybrid connectivity is not a one-time deployment, it is an ongoing service. Leaders should be able to ask who owns availability of hybrid connectivity, who approves changes, who monitors performance, and who coordinates incidents with providers. Your architecture must define ownership clearly between networking teams, cloud platform teams, and security teams. Without clear accountability, every connectivity event becomes a blame cycle. With clear accountability, you build confidence and operational maturity, and you make hybrid connectivity predictable rather than mysterious. With governance clear, you now connect hybrid design to routing and segmentation because connectivity without boundaries creates enterprise risk. When you connect cloud and on-premises environments, you do not want everything talking to everything by default. You design segmentation so only necessary traffic crosses the boundary, and you control east-west movement to reduce blast radius. You also ensure production access is protected from non-production pathways, because non-production often has weaker change discipline and more experimentation. Leaders care because this prevents a minor compromise from becoming a widespread breach. Architects care because segmentation reduces hidden dependencies and makes future change safer. With routing and segmentation in place, you now address the two most common hybrid silent killers: domain name system, and identity inconsistency. If name resolution is inconsistent, services resolve differently depending on where requests originate, creating unpredictable failures that are hard to diagnose. If identity boundaries are unclear, administrators and applications can end up with confusing access paths that create both security risk and operational friction. Your design ensures name resolution supports private access patterns and hybrid dependencies, and identity decisions remain consistent across environments, especially for privileged operations. Leaders care because these failures look like random outages. Architects care because inconsistent naming and identity create long-term operational debt. With technical considerations aligned, you now bring the conversation back to business economics because connectivity choices must be justified. Site-to-site virtual private network typically has a lower entry cost and can be very effective for many use cases. ExpressRoute involves additional costs through connectivity providers and ongoing commitments, and it often requires stronger operational engagement. The leadership mindset is to compare not only service cost but business impact cost. If 1 hour of downtime costs your organization more than the yearly difference between connectivity options, your decision becomes clearer. If workloads are less critical and can tolerate variability, a simpler approach may be justified. With cost understood, you now provide a practical decision framework for leaders and architects. Site-to-site virtual private network is usually a strong choice when you are early in cloud adoption, when workloads are not deeply dependent on hybrid calls, when you need faster enablement, and when your continuity requirements are moderate. It is also a practical option for non-production environments, development and test scenarios, and incremental migration phases. In mature designs, it can also serve as a resilient backup path when you want redundancy, because it provides an alternative transport approach when primary links degrade. With the site-to-site virtual private network fit clarified, you now define when ExpressRoute is typically justified. ExpressRoute is usually the right choice when hybrid connectivity is business critical, when workloads are latency sensitive, when data movement is significant, and when you need predictability for enterprise operations. It is also common when regulatory expectations and risk management require stronger assurance and a clearer separation from public internet routing. Leaders justify it when the cost of disruption is high and when cloud adoption is strategic and long-term. Architects justify it when the environment needs stable growth and predictable performance at scale. With both decision frameworks clear, you now introduce the pragmatic pattern that many enterprises adopt, using both options together. You may use ExpressRoute as the primary connectivity path for critical workloads and site-to-site virtual private network as a backup path for resilience and failover scenarios. You may also start with site-to-site virtual private network to enable early migrations. Then transition to ExpressRoute as adoption grows and dependencies deepen. This stage approach aligns investment with maturity and reduces risk by avoiding a single point of failure in connectivity. Leaders appreciate the stage investment story. Architects appreciate the resilience and flexibility. With resilience in mind, you now ground the decision in a realistic enterprise scenario. Imagine you migrate a customer service platform into Azure, but it still depends on an on-premises identity service and an integration system that provides customer data. If your connectivity cannot maintain stable latency and availability, agents experience delays, transaction failures increase, and leadership concludes the cloud migration made things worse. In contrast, when you match connectivity to business criticality and dependency patterns, performance stabilizes, support load decreases, and leadership gains confidence to modernize more aggressively. This is why hybrid connectivity decisions directly influence cloud adoption success. With the scenario understood, you now elevate the final leadership lesson. Hybrid connectivity must be operated like a product, not treated like plumbing. You define service expectations, monitoring, incident response processes, change governance, provider coordination, and continuous improvement. You also define which workloads are allowed to become hybrid dependent and what standards they must meet. So, hybrid does not become an uncontrolled dependency for everything. When you treat hybrid connectivity as a product, you create stability and predictability, and you avoid the common trap where connectivity is invisible until it fails. Let's now discuss the key takeaways from what you learned so far so you can make hybrid connectivity decisions that leaders trust and architects can defend. Hybrid connectivity is a strategic business decision because it influences continuity, latency, security boundaries, and the success of migration and modernization. Site-to-site virtual private network provides encrypted connectivity over the public internet and fits well for early adoption, moderate requirements, and flexible scenarios, including backup connectivity in mature environments. ExpressRoute provides private connectivity with greater predictability and is commonly justified for business-critical workloads, performance-sensitive dependencies, larger-scale adoption, and stronger operational assurance needs. Your decision should be based on business impact, not feature comparison, using lenses of risk, reliability, and reach. Governance and accountability are essential because hybrid connectivity is an ongoing service that requires ownership, routing discipline, segmentation, consistent domain name system, and identity integration, and measurable performance. Many enterprises adopt a resilient pattern using both connectivity options to balance stage investment, reliability, and risk reduction. If you want your hybrid connectivity strategy to be predictable, governed, and aligned to business outcomes, subscribe so you can continue through the rest of this playlist and build a full enterprise Azure architecture step by step. Like this video, so more leaders and architects learn how to choose connectivity models wisely. Comment with your hybrid challenge such as latency, segmentation across the boundary, or governance ownership, and share this with your team so you can align on one hybrid connectivity approach that supports secure and reliable cloud adoption.